This is Over+Rites, a show where we will overwrite your opinions with ours as we give the games we've played their last rites. You're listening to the voice of Andrew Horning, joined here with my wife,
Deanna Brew. Hello.
And we're going to say goodbye to Resident Evil 7.
Forever.
We're putting it in the dirt.
Where it belongs.
Oh man.
Yeah. Not really, but you know.
So, over the last month or so, you have been wanting a horror game.
Yes.
And you were trading thoughts between maybe Alien Isolation would be a good game. And for some reason I convinced you to get Resident Evil 7 for reasons, because I heard Alien Isolation was long or boring or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that was a mistake, because you didn't actually seem to enjoy Resident Evil 7 all that much.
I did not. I will preface this review by saying that it was not a horrible game. It is not a bad game by any means, but I did not enjoy it as much as I thought I would have.
So another thing I would like to do is preface perhaps expectations going in.
Mm-hmm.
So Resident Evil 7, to me, back when it was advertised and sold, was a soft reboot of the Resident Evil series, where maybe some of the storylines would be still present and canonical, but the story would be separated from the rest of the Resident Evil mythos. For instance, it would have a whole new character, not really deal with Leon or Chris or Claire or any of the old group, and just try and be in its own thing in much a similar way that Resident Evil 4 was compared to, the classic games, the Resident Evil 1 to 3 to Code Veronica era games. There was also perhaps this idea that Resident Evil was adopting some of the more modern horror game tropes, such as it's going to be in first person, and in a lot of ways it was going to be maybe not totally inspired by PT, because PT didn't invent first-person horror games, but PT was super popular, and I think we all know that, Capcom probably wanted to make this game because PT didn't exist and there was a demand for a PT, which they thought they could slap the Resident Evil brand on and
the rest is history.
Yeah, do something with that. But I'm sure we will get into that later. You didn't have any of those notions going into the game, or did you?
I kind of did. For the most part, I went into the game 80% blind. I did watch Video Game Donkey's review on this game, and I had a great time watching him play, and the general idea of that I got from his playthrough of it was a goofy, fun horror game. So I didn't really go in thinking this is going to be, a new skin for the Resident Evil game, or this is going to be a PT light kind of thing. I just wanted a horror game. It was on sale on the PlayStation 4, so I got it. That's pretty much it.
So after downloading the game, which took a long time, but we won't get into Sony's lackluster download services and download speeds, but it's not our fault. We live in Korea. We got super good internet. So after finally downloading the game, you get through the main menu, press play, and just guide me through maybe your first impressions.
Overall, I felt like the game had a really good soundtrack, save for the theme song that Eveline sings at the end. And warning, there will be spoilers in this podcast. Just want to make that clear.
Of course, we're going to be going through our experiences with the game, and that will mean talking about
the
events throughout the game, including the ending, including plot points, etc.
So yeah, just keep that in mind if you haven't played and you're interested in playing. There will be spoilers.
This is less a journalistic review and more of a personal analysis.
Right.
Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, when I first booted up the game, it looked really good. It looked really sharp, very crisp, good graphics, yada, yada, yada. I really enjoyed, before we get to the house, or whatever you want to call it, the cabin, as Ethan is exploring this region or this area, I enjoyed the really creepy vibe, and I think you did too, Andrew. I think you mentioned that when we first started playing together, or when you would watch me play, you really liked the atmosphere, the sense of dread, all that. I think in the first 10 minutes of the game was really well executed, and I was excited to see what the game was about. And I was scared, and I was unnerved, and I did complain and bitch and moan and say I don't want to play this game because I'm scared. I'm sure you remember all of that.
I was the same way, because, like, the first 10 minutes of the game are you just pulling up to this house. You can't get into it, so for whatever reason, you break and enter by going around, like, some of the side trails, and there's just creepy stuff, like dead cows or horses, and
Dead animals.
Their bodies are assorted in weird ritualistic ways, and you're creeped out and isolated, and there's a bunch of trees and movements and wildlife and sounds going on, and you feel constantly like you're being watched and observed, or that there's something lurking behind the shadows. And I owe a lot of that to a lot of excellent sound direction.
Yes, the sound I think was really well done. The look of the atmosphere and the setting and the colors were really well done. However, that's pretty much where I stopped with the compliments and all that shit. After that point, save for a couple of instances, I didn't like the game that much.
If you had to pick one reason, and of course the reasons you might not like this game are many and varied, but if you had to summarize it into one reason for us to explore right now, what would that be?
This game was basic.
Basic?
This game was a basic bitch of a horror game.
What does a basic bitch of a horror game mean?
Generic, uninspired, pretty, like every trope you've ever seen in a horror game, every cliche you've seen in any horror media, be it game or movies, was in this game. It didn't really do anything new for the horror franchise. It was just very generic and dull.
Are you saying perhaps it was a little too similar to, like, the proliferation of indie horror games that are all kind of like first person, I hold a flashlight and have to go find batteries type thing?
Exactly. It was that exact thing, and it was, I believe it was made to be played with VR primarily.
Which we did not. We did not play around with VR at all.
We did not play through VR. We played through the PS4 because I get really bad motion sickness, which is another reason why I did not enjoy the first person perspective and why I felt like it deviated too much from the classic Resident Evil style. The whole first person perspective I did not enjoy. I'm used to the third person angles and, you know, the clunky take controls, but for this game, the first person aspect did help with the creepy, spooky atmosphere a lot. But at the end of the day, that's not what I go to a Resident Evil game for. And I just got sick. I got dizzy and headaches, and I can't imagine playing this game or any game in VR for fear of just puking all over the console.
Okay, so you say it's not what you come to a Resident Evil game for. No. What do you come to a Resident Evil game for then? They
did nail the creepy atmosphere, but that's pretty much it. In addition to that, I like Resident Evil games because of the campiness. First and foremost, the corny jokes.
The Jill sandwiches.
The Jill sandwiches, the Chris Redfields punching through boulders, that kind of dumb shit. And this game took itself way too seriously. As a result, I did not have fun with it. I feel like classic Resident Evil games balance the creepy, the spooky, the macabre with some dumb shit to lighten the mood or to break the tension.
Yes,
and this game did not do that at all, I don't think.
Like the beginning of Resident Evil 4, for example, like you first get into that village where your cop friends are killed or whatever, and an entire village is just trying to kill you, and then the chainsaw guy comes and rips your head off a couple times before you figure out how to beat him, and then they all magically leave because they're really religious and hear a church bell, and then Leon says, "Where's everyone going?" Bingo. Like, it's a stupid
it's
line.
Hilarious though.
But it
works. It fits the whole style of the Resident Evil franchise. It breaks the tension. You get a laugh out of it. It's great. It's fun.
Watching you, I haven't seen any of it when I watched you play through it, but there were not any everyone's going to bingo moments.
There were no actual fun moments. I did not have fun playing this game. To be honest, I just wanted to get it over with. For the sake of this podcast, I powered through it, and I appreciated certain aspects of it, like the sound and the character design and the look of it, and the mild callbacks to the classic Resident Evil canon, but for the most part, I did not enjoy this game. It just wasn't fun. Shooting the monsters wasn't fun. It was a chore.
I have to talk about the sound design in terms of when I mean sound design, I'm not necessarily meaning it had good music because I don't really remember the music that much. I personally mean the environment of that game is inside a small house, inside very tiny rooms, inside very narrow hallways, and it feels claustrophobic and everything's disgusting. Like, you kind of feel like, I don't want to touch anything in here, and I don't even want to breathe the air. But then there's also life to these hallways.
Yeah.
And you hear people, like, there's a second story. The game will make footsteps. You will hear people walking around on the second floor. You will hear voices through the walls and things like that that really
Unnerve
breathe
you.
that, like, you are not only in this terrifying, disgusting space, but also there are people who are also in this space with you that are, you know, that are the human embodiment of this space, I suppose you could say. So I don't know, like,
They did
it's
that
good
very
atmosphere
well.
design.
The atmosphere, they nailed it. And I agree with all those points you just made. I think not just the sound design, but the general feel of the claustrophobia, the creaking hallways was really well executed.
But not Resident Evil?
No, in a way, yes, because I
like,
do remember the Resident Evil 1 game on the GameCube did have some creepy noises and like glass shattering if you walk down the hallway that'll startle you, that kind of thing. But again, I feel like this game was made primarily for VR playthrough, so they really went all in with the creepy sound effects, the creepy noises, the haunting wails through the halls, so that when you're playing in VR, you're constantly on edge, constantly tense and anxious for a jump scare or something like that.
But we didn't play it in VR, so we don't really know. And also, that stuff was effective not in VR.
Right.
Like,
I know, I'm just saying.
Yeah. But I think going back to the other points of it not feeling like Resident Evil, like Resident Evil originally took place in a mansion. You know, this one takes place in a dilapidated southern manor, which is not a mansion by any means, but in a way, like, I feel the game being set in a residential, the evil being set in a resident. You know what I'm trying to say?
I do.
Like, this place is a home, and
The home is evil.
the home is evil. It's a bad house.
Yeah,
So
that's a good way to put it. I didn't think of it that way, honestly.
there are also things like very, very classic puzzles of, I have to find the griffin, and I have to put it inside of the shield.
Get me started on the puzzles.
Okay, tell me, but you agree that puzzles are a part of Resident Evil.
Puzzles are a very important part of Resident Evil, in my opinion. And one of the other reasons why I did not enjoy this game as much and why I don't think of it as a true quote-unquote Resident Evil game is because of the lack of puzzles and how easy and simple they were. It was lame. The puzzles were lame. I distinctly remember one puzzle near the end of the game where I think you're on the ship at that point in the game, the abandoned freight ship or whatever you want to call it. All you have to do in this puzzle is just match up the portraits on one side of the wall to the exact same portraits on the other side of the wall. Just make sure they mirror each other, and you solve the puzzle. And there's no real crazy mechanics to it. All you have to do is go up to the individual painting, press the button to turn it clockwise or counterclockwise, and once it mirrors the same painting opposite it, then you solve the puzzle.
It's just those
It's dumb.
Skyrim tomb puzzles.
Kind of, yeah.
Well, I didn't see the fright part of the game because most of my experience came from the early part of the game where I was watching you play it. And some of the puzzles in there were like shadow manipulation and things like that. And I don't know, like that first part of the game felt immensely Resident Evil to me.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out this, I guess, divide between us.
Where
in which
it goes down.
Yeah, where, at what point did it...
I agree.
Did it feel like a Resident Evil game at that point?
I think, I kind of agree. It felt mostly, not 100%, but to me it felt mostly like a classic Resident Evil game, all the way through the mansion part, or the manor, whatever you want to call it, the big house. And then I think my turning point where I started to feel like this is dumb, this doesn't feel like a classic Resident Evil game, was when you encounter Lucas.
I don't know these people.
I think, I'm sure people who played this game know who I'm talking
Well,
about.
let's...
Jigsaw Light. Remember that part of the game?
Back up for a second.
Alright, we'll get to it.
I think now we need to maybe discuss some of the story elements here.
So
you can take it from there.
So yeah, we talked about it being first person, me not liking it that much. We've also discussed the lack of classic campiness and cheesiness that makes the Resident Evil franchise stand out from other horror game franchises. This game didn't have that, or if it did, it went right over my head. But yeah, another reason why I did not like this game is because the characters were boring and dumb and uninspired, save for maybe the old man character. I can't remember his name. I wrote it down though. Papa Jack Baker was kind of interesting, and I feel like the voice actor did a great job, and the design of his character and his general look and vibe as a menacing patriarch were pretty well done. But he kind of dies off relatively early in the game, and you never really see him again in that form anyway. So that was lame, and I think he was honestly the most engaging character in the whole franchise, in the whole game. Everybody else sucked. Mia sucked. Ethan was a wet blanket. No personality.
Ethan is the character you play as.
Ethan is the character you play as in this first-person game. So I understand they made Ethan, or they probably made Ethan boring and a blank slate so that the player could insert themselves into the role of the first-person shooter. But he was still lame. I think he had very little lines. You don't really know what he looks like, which I guess is unimportant. But, I don't know. I feel like in other first-person shooter games, the person you're playing as still has personality. I don't know how they portray it, like in Doom. You know what I mean? When you're playing Doom.
Like Doom doesn't talk at all, but he's got some personality.
But he's got some personality. He's got some style to him. Same with BioShock, which is one of my personal favorite FPS games. When you're playing as, I think the main character in BioShock's name is Jack. When you're playing as Jack, even though it's first person and you can't see his face or he doesn't really talk very much, I still feel like when you're playing as him, you still get a sense of his personality, a sense of his character. And you don't really get that at all from Ethan. He's just a man with a gun going to look for his wife. And there also isn't really a sense of urgency in him looking for his wife, I think. Like, yeah, he came all the way over here to find her, but it didn't come through, if that makes any sense, through the game.
Like a sincerity, perhaps?
Yeah, it just felt empty, and like, why should I care about finding his wife? That kind of thing.
It seemed like the typical trope of girl got kidnapped.
Damsel in distress, yeah, and I don't care. It's 2019, we're over that shit. And also, Mia was lame, and I didn't care about saving her dumbass. She was dumb, and she shouldn't have been in that situation in the first place. So going into the story, as far as I know, I didn't go into the details very much, because again, I just kind of rushed through the game to get it over with. But my understanding of it was that she worked for Umbrella Corps, or whoever is behind the scenes in this game, to keep an eye on a human test subject who makes these monsters. Her name is Evelyn, a little girl. We'll get to the little girl bullshit in a minute. So Ethan's wife, Mia, works as a sort of bodyguard / babysitter for this mutant monster making little girl. And it's like, there are other jobs, right? Like, you see this shit go down, you're taking this dangerous human mutant girl thing around on a big freighter ship, and she's making monsters, and you don't think, you know what? I'm gonna see if Starbucks is hiring, because this is some bullshit. These health benefits
are not worth it.
Yeah, so, I don't know, I feel like
there are
it's
maybe
just dumb.
A lot of contrivances.
There really are. all of me is like, save me, or like, go away, Ethan, it's for your own good, or like, don't come save me, Ethan, or like,
and then Ethan just does not
and
listen.
then Ethan just doesn't listen to her, and I'm just like, I don't care about any of these characters. They're all dumb. They all are, the voice actress for Mia, I think, wasn't doing it for me. And also the hair was really bad. I think the hair, particularly on Mia's character, looked bad. It looked like kind of what the Bloodborne characters look like the
custom
wolf characters, like the way their hair flows. But I didn't like the way it looked on Mia or the other characters. Also, Marguerite's hair in certain cutscenes looked like shit.
Marguerite is one of the evil house dwellers.
Yes. So yeah, the characters were lame. Mia was lame. Ethan was lame. Marguerite was lame. Kind of interesting in the same way that the patriarch character was kind of interesting. But I got over her really quick. My least favorite character, apart from Mia, was Lucas Baker, I think his name was. Because he was just dumb. He literally was just a knockoff of the Jigsaw.
Redneck Jigsaw.
I know it sounds bad, but that's what he came off as to me. So, his levels were lame. Yeah, the characters were lame. So, they didn't do anything for me.
Papa Redneck. I feel like I'm not gonna remember his name. Mm-hmm. I think he is the scariest among, let's say, the main three house dwellers, with Eveline, the overarching villain, being separated from these three.
Right.
Because, like, everyone's kind of just met that person, that, like, weird, scary, like, redneck, that, like, something is off about them. And I don't mean to disparage redneck culture, sometimes, but, like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, we all meet that, like...
The creepy old man in the old cabin who has a chainsaw for no real reason. I don't know. He's weird. Creepy old man.
Just creepy old man.
They nailed his character very well. Moving on to the Eveline character, boy, did I hate that bitch. What?
I kind of want to go down the whole family here.
Oh, God. We already talked. Marguerite doesn't warrant.
Well, I don't know. Like, what about Marguerite was not as scary as the
She
old
was
man?
barely in the game, I think. Marguerite literally only makes an appearance for her specific boss fight, for the most part.
All right. Yeah. So... she's not scary just because we kind of don't know much about her.
In the boss fight, she's pretty scary. But, again, you kind of get rid of her.
She's kind of just a bug monster.
She's a bug monster. It's gross. I don't want to think about her because she's so fucking gross. Marguerite is gross and lame.
And I actually played through that boss fight, and I thought the boss fight itself was annoying.
It was a really annoying boss fight. We'll get to the actual fight mechanics later on in this podcast, but yeah, Marguerite was barely in the game, I think.
All right, and then the younger man is Lucas is he's boring just because he's redneck Jigsaw.
Yes, pretty much. Very cliche, super redundant and generic torture porn loving redneck bad guy. Nothing new was done with his character. The voice actor did a fine job. The look of the character was fine, not too gross. Some of the puzzles with his jigsaw type traps were interesting and cool. But what annoyed me was, so you play his jigsaw trap room puzzle through a weird VHS type scenario. So as you play as Ethan through the game and you search through the house and the estate, you find these VHS tapes that you put into the TVs, and whatever Ethan is watching on the TV, the game switches to that person's perspective inside whatever is, the video or the movie or whatever. So you first encounter Lucas's jigsaw room in one of those VHS tapes, basically revealing how to solve the puzzle safely. So when you play as Ethan and you encounter that it's the exact same jigsaw puzzle trap room, you know how to beat that puzzle room safely without Ethan getting hurt or killed, because you've already seen the solution in the VHS tape. So they just recycled that whole puzzle.
The idea is that it's basically Ethan watched a walkthrough,
more or less.
Therefore when Ethan does it for real, not having watched the videotape explaining the puzzle, he can just kind of break the puzzle.
Yeah. Which I guess, I mean, they set it up that way.
I thought that was kind of cool.
It's
I thought it was
cool.
Not necessarily inventive, but like a cool concept of... Because the redneck guy isn't Jigsaw, because Jigsaw in his mythos creates, quote, fair way to get through his puzzles. His puzzles have solutions, whereas the redneck guy did not have any actual... No. His puzzles were traps. They were illusions of...
being solvable and being able to get out of safely or with
So the solution of the puzzle was to see what Ethan's predecessor saw and be able to break the puzzle through that.
So I guess in theory, if you play the game and you never find that VHS tape and you never see it, then you won't know how to safely solve the puzzle trap room as Ethan, and then you get screwed over. But I'm pretty sure...
Don't you have to see
I'm pretty sure you have to see the videotape. I'm pretty sure. I don't remember the specifics. But I think as Ethan, you very, very easily find that VHS tape and a TV to play it on. So the game kind of like shoos you in the direction of getting the correct solution. But yeah, I just think they could have done something a bit more inventive with his character and with his... if you want to call that his boss fight. So immediately after that, when you solve the puzzle room and all that shit, and you make your way to where Mia and another character who is also super lame and barely in the game, Zoe, when you meet up with them to deliver the serum to cure them of whatever disease is causing all this bullshit, another boss fight starts immediately. So when I played this game, I thought that the boss fight that starts after you meet up with Zoe and Mia with the serum is Lucas, who has succumbed to the biohazard virus or whatever it is and turned into this big monstrosity, and then there's the whole boss fight after that. However, as I was making notes for this podcast, I found that was not Lucas that we fought. It was Jack, for some dumb reason that if they had explained in the game, it went over my head because I wasn't paying attention. So yeah.
So you just random Jack comes back?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right.
Yeah, I know.
Keep in mind, in this game's story, they are all infected with some sort of regenerative virus. Mm-hmm. So, like, say, this boss gets chainsawed in half, and he just regrows his lower torso or something like that, until you eventually just kind of kill them enough times to where they don't regenerate. Kind of like a homunculus in Full Metal Alchemist, if that makes sense.
Yes.
To anyone who's watched Full Metal Alchemist.
If you haven't, you should.
You should. It's on Netflix. It's amazing.
Yes.
Brotherhood or the original series, you can't really go wrong. Although I'd recommend Brotherhood. Anyway, we're not talking about the glory that is Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Let's talk about Resident Evil 7.
Getting back to Resident Evil 7. So we discussed the main characters, Mia, Ethan, yada yada yada. Moving on to other quote unquote characters in the game. So those were, I guess, the main bosses in the game, and in classic Resident Evil fashion, you have the normal grunt enemies that you have to get through to solve the puzzles, find the right path to progress the story, that kind of thing. So in classic Resident Evil games, you have zombies or you have mind-controlled townspeople from RE4, if I remember that correctly. In this game, you don't have zombies or anything like that. You have literal, just black glob, goopy monsters. And I thought that was super lame. I thought it was dumb, very generic. They look like, you know how Venom is from the Spider-Man franchise? God. They look like if Venom just had a really bad day. He had enough of it, and he just went off.
Venom didn't do his makeup, that kind of thing.
Yeah. He needed a spa day. Mm-hmm. They look like if Venom really needs a spa day.
So,
they were lame.
These generic monsters, they just seemed like they were arbitrarily scattered throughout the game because the developers felt like you need something to shoot.
Exactly.
Because the main antagonists, they'll do patrols, but you can't really kill them until you go into their boss fight arena.
Right.
Or at least that's how it works with the first male patriarch boss.
You're pretty much exactly right.
And so, you can shoot them and that'll stun them, but you won't ever kill them that way. Mm-hmm. And I guess they just felt like you need something to kill.
Right. So these monsters, these dumb, tar-looking motherfuckers, are the creation of Eveline, who was a character we neglected to get into.
We'll get into her eventually.
Oh, fine. I really want to go off on Eveline.
Okay, but let's talk about these dumb tar monsters.
So she just makes them. We don't know why. She calls them her friends. She just has these powers that enables her to make these knockoff Venom monsters. And that's it.
Do you think the game would have been improved if these dumb Venom monsters were not in the game and the only enemies were just the antagonists?
Yeah, I think if they went like a more PT route in that way and had it more like puzzled and like suspense based instead of like FPS, we need shooting and we need action, yada yada yada, I would have enjoyed it more. Because when it did get to those points in the game, that's when I felt 100%, this isn't Resident Evil, this is a generic horror FPS.
Yeah, this is just any other video game.
Yeah. Like, I'm pretty sure if you take the scenes where you're fighting these tar Venom monsters and insert them in any other, like, Doom or... I don't know.
Do not burden Doom
you know
with
what I'm
such...
trying to say.
Doom has cool enemies, but yeah,
exactly.
Sure.
But if you take that out of context and just put it in any generic game, it would fit right in. And that I didn't like at all. I feel like Resident Evil is known for its distinct...
Lickers.
Like
we don't even really have a good name for these creatures.
No, I don't know what they're called.
They're just dumb tar monsters.
Yeah.
They got nothing on even generic enemies like the Las Plagas guys.
Yeah. The Las Plagas were cool. I could throw down with those guys.
I'd hang out with Las Plagas.
Yeah.
Have a beer, talk about what's it like to have a parasite in your head.
Right.
You know?
I'm sure it's a great time. But yeah, these guys were lame. They don't speak because they're just dumb, mindless monsters, and their only goal is to kill you.
It's just lame.
So you just run around shooting them, and if you can't shoot them, you just run around them.
They are created... Let's just get into Eveline because you want to talk about it. They are created by Eveline. The big bad.
I hate her. She sucks. I don't like when horror franchises, movies, games, whatever... use creepy children or creepy little girls as their main creep factor. I think that's super overdone, cliche, generic, uninspired. I need another word for uninspired.
It's so cliche.
It's just so cliche. I'm over it. I know little girls and like their little shoes are creepy in these horror scenarios, but I'm over it.
Or just like, this is supposed to be something so innocent, but it's been twisted by evil.
Whatever. It's 2019. How innocent are we?
Well, I'm not a little girl, so... That's
but
more like a Star Wars theme, not a Twilight Zone, but whatever.
Whatever. Yeah, Eveline sucked. She was lame. And then the twist, I kind of saw coming well before it was revealed, the twist that Eveline is not really this cute little creepy girl.
They telegraph it a lot.
They telegraph it a lot. So I forgot to mention another character who is Eveline, old lady Eveline. You see her... sporadically throughout the game. You first encounter her when you're kidnapped by the Baker family, and she's just a creepy, silent old lady in a wheelchair. Not that old ladies are creepy,
but she doesn't have lines. She just sits there and stares at you.
So I really, one of the points in the game that I truly, really enjoyed was the part where when you are left alone after the family dinner, when they staple your hand back to your arm after it's been cut off by Mia for no real reason, you get up and you start exploring, and they leave little grandma Eveline with you in the dining room, and she's sitting in her wheelchair, and as you move around the room, she will move her head to follow you around and look at you. And I thought that was really creepy and really well done, and I really love that. And then throughout the game, as you're running around, solving puzzles and killing these Venom monsters, she'll just be sitting in her wheelchair randomly for no reason by herself, completely silent, just creeping the fuck out of you. And I really love that. So I really enjoyed little old lady Eveline. And I'm sure you found this pretty funny, Andrew. Whenever I would see little old lady Eveline just sitting somewhere in a corner being creepy, I would try to shoot her. I did not hesitate to pull my gun out and be like, this bitch ain't up to no good. So I just tried to shoot her every time, and the game wouldn't let me. I got so mad about that.
Yeah.
Every time I would put my crosshairs over her to kill the bitch, the crosshairs would disappear and I could not pull the trigger. I feel like all the drama in the rest of the game could have been solved if I could just kill old Lady Eveline at the very beginning. But now...
I had a theory when I first started seeing, like, old Lady Eveline, because at the point you don't know she's Eveline.
Right.
So she's just old lady at that point, that maybe she was just kind of like the old grandma of this family and saw it get turned and twisted and infected, and maybe she's not the infected one, so she's actually just like a tragic character, like bird, like stuck in this wheelchair, not able to do anything. I can see that,
but
but that's not what they did.
No.
So
I knew right away she was trouble, and I tried to kill the bitch. But anyway, so that's old Lady Eveline. She's pretty cool. But then when the twist is revealed that she's in fact Eveline and that the little girl you've been seeing running around causing all this trouble is just an astral projection, I don't know, some kind of hallucination, it turns into a final boss fight for the game, and it was horrible.
Eveline is supposed to have mental powers, like Legion or something like that. So she can create these astral projections. She is bound in this wheelchair because she's old and frail. But she can make herself appear as a little girl by projecting her, image to Ethan or whoever you're playing as. So yeah, that final boss was lame.
Horrible. It looked dumb. Like, it visually, just the big Medusa head coming at you was not scary at all, and I just wasn't interested. And it took us a minute to figure out how to beat her. We tried throwing bombs at her and all that, and then I had to look it up and find out.
We thought it was a puzzle.
Yeah.
Because, okay, what happens is Eveline is infecting the family with her monster conversion, whatever. So that's why they're all crazy. But, like, you get the anti-Eveline serum and just inject her with the anti-Eveline serum, and then that causes her to understandably be a little upset. I think a really effective moment. We'll get into that. Let's just talk about the boss fight for now. So she gets upset. She transforms from her old lady persona into just a giant face monster that takes up like an entire wall of a room. And you're locked into this room with the giant face monster. And it's just coming towards you, and there's no doors to go through. You're just kind of locked in there. When I was fighting Eveline, it just seemed like, okay, what's the puzzle? Because, like, okay, I gotta, like, shoot her in the eye or do something like this to stall her, and then something will happen. Like, I was expecting something more, but it turns out the solution to the puzzle is just shoot her a bunch. Get your grenade launcher out and just unload. And that was just profoundly sad because, we kind of took turns on and off. Like, I played through the beginning and some minor parts here and there, and then the final boss. And, like, I feel like the game early on, the first parts of the game are the absolute strongest. They have puzzles, they have an interesting bad guy character, they are setting up a lot of interesting ideas that I don't think they do anything with, and that is perfectly embodied in the final boss fight, where you just shoot them.
Shoot her in the face. That's it. No,
for instance,
no finesse, no style. Just get a gun and shoot the bitch in the face, and that's it. You're done. And then the game ends, and then it's like, okay, bye, thank you.
Yeah. So you shoot her a bunch, and then she gets bigger. So now we're in phase 2 of this boss fight. So now I'm thinking, okay, phase 2. Now it gets real. But phase 2 of the boss fight is you laying motionless on the ground as a giant kaiju version of Eveline erupts out of the house, and then helicopters show up. Chris Redfield propels down, hands you an anti-monster gun, and you just one shot or a couple shots into the face of kaiju Eveline, and Eveline's dead, and Chris Redfield's like, I'm Chris Redfield, I'm here to help. And then roll credits.
That's literally how it happened.
Just out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So where did this anti-monster gun come from?
Like, Chris Redfield is not mentioned in the game at all, period. I firmly believe they just threw him in at the end, literally to just be like, oh yeah, we're a Resident Evil game. We have Chris Redfield.
We forgot. We have to do something, like Umbrella Corporation.
Yeah. It was bad. The ending was super bad.
It was just abrupt and like...
Very abrupt. No, no foreshadowing or anything leading up to it or anything. Just shoot the bitch, end of game. Here's Chris Redfield. Bye. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me look through my notes real quick, everybody, and see if there's anything I missed or neglected to mention. We talked about that, this, that. I don't know, Andrew, do you have any questions for me?
Well, I just wanted to say, I think the effective moment leading into the final boss fight was that you read about Eveline as she is a child, but due to the experiments done on her to get her psychic powers or whatever, she suffered rapid aging in the same way that like Solid Snake suffers rapid aging in Metal Gear Solid 4. So she has the maturity and mental capacity of like an 8-year-old girl, but is in the body of, you know, an 80-year-old woman. And I think that really comes through in one solid moment of voice acting and direction where you stab Eveline with the anti-Eveline serum, and she just says, like, why does everyone hate me? In a very immature, like, totally something an 8-year-old girl would say. And, like, I don't know, it was an effective moment of just, like, tragedy. But, like, it's also hard to feel sorry for her, but also, I don't know, it just seemed like a more complicated emotional moment that I think the game does not have any other examples of that.
Right. Another thing I did want to mention that led me to not liking this game that much is the gratuitous gore. I know it's a horror game. I know previous Resident Evil games have lots of gore and guts and bloody, gross stuff. But I feel like they went a bit overboard with this one, and I didn't like that. I thought it was gross just for the sake of being gross, unlike previous Resident Evil games. Early on in the game, where you're exploring the manor, and basically the part where Andrew and I agreed the game was the strongest, before you kill, what's his name, Jack Baker for the first time.
Papa Redneck.
The grossness and like the bugs and all that stuff really worked to set the stage for this horrific environment. But as you progress through the game, it just got grosser and grosser, and like the Venom characters and like slime and guts and the bugs from Marguerite's boss fight were really annoying and really gross. I don't know, it just didn't vibe with me. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy the gore that was there just for the sake of being scary.
So you think maybe, like you said, other Resident Evil games have been gory.
Yeah,
for
Resident
instance,
Evil 4 is
Resident
really
Evil
gory.
4, you get your head decapitated by a chainsaw. Like,
but again, I feel like the grossness of that is offset by the campiness. And I feel like for them to go this gory and this gross in this game and not have something to offset the gross factor or to lighten up a little bit, it felt like torture porny, like, you know, watching a Saw movie or watching The Human Centipede, and it's just, that's for some people, and there's nothing wrong with that, but for me, I'm not down for that kind of horror at all. Yeah.
Yeah, that's...
Overall, pretty decent in the first, I don't want to call it the first act, even.
Well, yeah, let's call it the first act.
The first act,
The first
as
act
if it's a
with
movie.
Papa Redneck.
Yeah, and then it just goes downhill from there, and then the ending is horribly whack. It's whack. So yeah, my general consensus is not horrible. Like, I'm kind of glad that I played it and paid money for it, but I will not be playing it again.
Let's ask the question like this. Do you enjoy, like, if it didn't have the Resident Evil name on it, would you have enjoyed it more?
I think so, yeah. I did like, it wasn't completely devoid of classic Resident Evil style or gimmicks. Like, we did have the whole, you know, rifling through your storage crate to make sure you have the supplies you need, and keeping track of your inventory because you only have so much space, that kind of thing. And the herbs, you know, get the green herb and combining the items, and some of the puzzles were pretty interesting, even though there weren't enough puzzles for my liking.
At the very least, were classic Resident Evil puzzles of find the lion's head and attach it to the shield and stuff like that.
Yeah, there were things like that, but there wasn't enough of it for my liking. Not enough to warrant the full Resident Evil title, I guess. Like, if they had marketed as, you know, do you want to call it a spinoff? I guess.
No, it's not a spinoff. It's Resident Evil 7.
That's what I mean. If they had marketed as a spinoff, or marketed as a game inspired by Resident Evil and made it its own thing, I might have enjoyed it a bit more. But going in and expecting the classic Resident Evil feel and not getting it left me disappointed. If you are looking for a first-person horror game and you're not as nitpicky or as critical as myself and my husband here, Andrew, you'd probably would like this game very much, especially in VR if you don't have severe debilitating motion sickness like I do. But if you're a true diehard Resident Evil fan and you love the classics and that's what you go for, primarily the story and the campy characters and the puzzles and the horror aspect is secondary, then you probably won't like this game that much.
I'm confused because, like, you wanted this game because you wanted a horror game. Was it effective as a horror game?
At first, yes. But then after, like, again, the first act, yes. Creepy and unsettling and unnerving and disturbing, yes. But then as the game went on, it just became generic horror movie and the jump scares didn't do it for me. The characters weren't engaging or creepy enough.
Would you say it became a bit, like, maybe repetitive after that point?
Yeah.
Because, like, it seems the early part of the game was really the experience we wanted, and then the rest of the game just kind of tries to do that over and over again, but worse?
I would say so, yeah.
Right, maybe diminishing returns over time.
Yes.
I don't know. Anything else you want to say, I guess? I think we're starting to get to wrap up a little bit.
I think I'm ready to wrap up if you are. I can't really think of anything else to add. But yeah.
I would think, okay, let me, like, my truest maybe interpretation of Resident Evil 7 is that it is, without the Resident Evil name, it is just another kind of generic horror game that you see on Steam that the indie developers love to make with the, like I said a long time ago, like, you have a flashlight and it's dark, that kind of thing. Like, this game doesn't make you search for batteries, but I bet in an earlier version you did. Well, I would definitely say, well, I haven't played a lot of those games. I've seen, like, Let's Plays of them, and they just don't seem very high quality a lot of time. This seems like the highest quality of that experience. So if you are into those games, then this would potentially be really, really good. But I think it's hard for me to look past the fact that it is just the embodiment of those kind of cookie-cutter modern first-person horror games. And the only thing that kind of saves it is the Resident Evil name. But as you say, it's just not Resident Evil enough.
No, I believe it's primarily a generic first-person horror game, like you just said, with the Resident Evil name tacked on as an afterthought. When it should have been the other way around, I'm sure I would have enjoyed it a lot more had it been the other way around. I did go into this game wanting a horror game, but when I saw that it was Resident Evil, my mind shifted and thought, okay, I want Resident Evil primarily. I want that feel, I want that vibe. And I didn't really get that very much throughout the entire game. But yeah, that's my opinion.
All right, so I guess those are the last rites for Resident Evil 7. The casket is in the ground, we're putting the dirt on it, we're leaving the funeral.
It's raining.
It's sad, but
rest in peace.
Rest in peace. You know, we might not have always gotten along, you and me, Resident Evil 7, but, like, just rest well. This has been Over+Rites.
Thank you for listening. We look forward to chatting with you guys more about other games in the future. For now, goodbye.
Bye.